So technically you can fit a human in this trunk. However, there is unfortunately a glow-in-the-dark lever here that will allow them to escape pretty easily. Hi everybody, welcome to Meconomist. So today I'm going to attempt to make the most interesting and in-depth detailed video about the Porsche Cayman's two trunks, or boots for those of you outside of the United States. I know, it's a low bar, but that's how I roll. I like to set the bar low and then go right over it. And at the end of the video, if you think I achieved this goal, go ahead and subscribe and smash that like button. I'd really appreciate it. Here's my confession. I absolutely love sports cars with hatchbacks. And that's not to be confused with hot hatches and sporty hatchbacks. They don't really rustle my jimmies the way rear-wheel drive sports cars that happen to have a hatchback in the rear get me going. I'd be lying if this wasn't a reason why I chose to purchase a Cayman over like a Boxster or something like that. I may be a little bit biased, but I truly believe that the Porsche Cayman is the perfect example of a sports car with a hatchback. See, the 987 Cayman is one of the most efficient packages ever put into a sports car. And by efficiency, I mean the amount of actual usable space you have on the interior and in the storage compartments compared to the overall footprint and size of the car itself. The 987 is a pretty small car, but it has the amount of storage and volume that you'd find in a much bigger car. How does the Cayman do this? Well, obviously it all comes down to the fact that the engine is in the middle, way down there, and it has a fastback sloping roof. That allows you to have a top hinged hatch and basically two kind of storage compartments in the back. And then in the front, since there's no engine there either, you have a pretty deep trunk or boot. And that's what's really unique and great about a Porsche Cayman of this era. Typically a hatchback is great in terms of spatial volume and accessibility, but there are some drawbacks like security. Since the hatchback is part of the rest of the whole compartment, and there's usually a big window in the back, you can kind of see into the back of the hatch pretty easily. Anybody that's able to access the main cabin of the car will also be able to access the hatchback and whatever you have back here. And the same goes the other way too. If you're able to get into the hatchback, you're able to get into the main cabin. So most cars that have a hatchback also have a cover like this that adds some security. That's really all this is here for, is to secure your items back here. So when you close the hatch, you can't see what's down in the bottom part. So I will now demonstrate removing this cover just so you know how easy it is. Bam. Most of the other drawbacks I can think of here all have to do with the fact that whatever you're storing back here shares the same airspace as the cabin. That'll become a concern if you play a lot of sports or if you go to the gym and work out and you have a bunch of smelly clothes that you throw in the back of the hatch. That's gonna stink up the rest of your cabin. Say you go get some pizzas or some fish from the market and you plop them back here. That's gonna stink up the rest of your cabin for about a week as well. Especially because this whole thing is lined with carpet, which just loves to trap smells. Okay, so here we are at the famous Porsche frunk, or front trunk. I don't know what you would call it in the Queen's English. I guess if it's a boot and a front boot, it would be called a fruit, or a foot. We'll call it the foot. So in the frunk slash foot, you actually have quite a bit of space. As you can tell, I tend to carry around a lot of unnecessary junk in here. I know, Colin Chapman would hate me, but there's some useful things in here. I've got my battery pack, because I've left my headlights on before and needed that. I've got a little toolkit, got some cleaning spray. I also have a pirate flag back here, all my old license plates and license plate covers, and a bunch of leaves, which I should probably vacuum out. Sorry I didn't do that before I started filming. But as you can see, even with all that junk in there, there is still plenty of space in here. I mean, I can stick my hand all the way down there and it goes all the way up to my shoulder. In addition, you also have some secret compartments. So if you look in here, this is technically where your CD changer is. It's also where, if you have a nav system, it actually runs off of DVD-ROMs, which is kind of old school and crazy. That would be right here, but I don't have the nav system. Since I don't have that, you have a little secret storage compartment there. It's accessible from the top as well, so you can put stuff in there. Up here you have your battery cover. The weird thing about a lot of Porsches is the battery is up here, which makes sense for weight distribution. However, the front trunk lid is electronically actuated. So if you ever need to open your trunk with your battery being dead, you're kind of screwed. I know this is something that's been discussed a lot on Porsche videos, and it kind of gets made fun of because it is kind of a silly, very German engineering quirk. But I've actually had my battery die on me twice, and the fact that the battery's up here hasn't really been a problem. So the first time my battery died, there was still just enough power that you could open the front trunk, just not enough power to run the starter motor. So that wasn't a big deal. The second time, there was not enough power to run anything, but I was able to bump start it because it is a manual. So I got some neighbors to help me push the car, put it in first gear, drop the clutch, bump start it. It started right up, and it was all good. Another compartment you have back here is your brake fluid. So if you ever need to redo your brake fluid or refill it, just throw it in there. You have your washer fluid right over there, and that blue thing, I don't know if you can see that. It's very, very bright outside. And then another thing that's very interesting is if you open this secret panel here, you have a tire repair kit. I don't want to take every single thing out, but this thing is a little air compressor so you can refill your tires. That's pretty useful. You've got all the rest of your tools and tubing and valves and everything in here. You have some tire sealant. It's pretty interesting that Porsche would have this because I'm pretty sure their main goal in life is for you to never actually work on your own car ever. So they've hidden this so that hopefully you'll just do the right thing and call roadside assistance and just have somebody else do it for you, because in Germany, everybody has their own job and you stick to your own job. And why would you do someone else's job if you can just pay them to do it for you? But I'm sure some half-American engineer at Porsche said, well, there are other countries where people like to work on their stuff, and so they just threw this in here to throw us Yanks a bone. So the front boot lid is made out of aluminum, which means it's very, very light. In fact, it's so light and so delicate that you actually want to be careful that when you're putting stuff back into your trunk, like this, you want to make sure that it's going all the way down and not coming above this threshold here. Because if you put stuff and it's sticking up above here, you can pretty easily dent your front hood from the inside by just slamming that trunk closed. Another thing you got to be careful with, I was just about to leave and the wind was so strong that it blew the front trunk down in kind of a scary and violent way. So if you're in very windy conditions, watch your head and your fingers. So technically you can fit a human in this trunk. It is large enough for your average sized human. However, there is unfortunately a glow-in-the-dark lever here that will allow them to escape pretty easily. So one thing that confuses some people when you first open the front trunk is they're expecting to be able to just open it right away, which you can't do because there's a latch here. And the reason there's a latch there is so that if you do happen to have this open and you start to drive for some reason without realizing that it's actually open, the wind's not going to catch it and blow this up and block your windshield. The latch can be somewhat annoying because it's a little bit pinchy sometimes, but at the end of the day, it is for your own safety. All right, so next I want to talk about this part right up here, the luggage shelf. Anything you put up here is going to have a propensity to either slide that way or worse, slide that way. The netting is quite useful. I highly recommend using it anytime you put something up here. The last thing you want is putting something up here and then you have to slam on the brakes or stop quickly, and then whatever you had here is all of a sudden all up in your business in the front compartment. Luggage shelves are great for people who play golf and stuff like that, usually. But I don't think you can fit any kind of golf set up here. So that's out of the question. You can fit smaller kind of carry-on size suitcases back here, and that's perfectly great. You can even fit another one back there and another one in the front trunk. Another question I've been asked several times is, the fact that the engine is under here, does that mean that things on top of the engine cover get hot? And the answer really is no. That being said, if you're gonna have ice cream or frozen yogurt or whatever, frozen peas, put them in the front trunk. They'll stay much better insulated than they will up here, mostly because of the fact that the sun is gonna be beating down on whatever you have on top of here. Plus, the last thing you want is a bunch of ice cream and frozen peas just splattering all over your windshield the first time you have to stop quickly. Another weird German Porsche quirk is that your oil filler cap is here inside the trunk. I guess it makes sense seeing as the engine is right under there. However, the fact that it's back here means that anytime you change the oil, you gotta be very careful that you kind of cover all this area so you don't get oil into your carpeting, because that shit'll never come out. You also have your coolant cap here, same deal, just look out, just make sure you don't get it all here. Don't open your coolant cap while your engine is still warm. It's risky with things might wanting to spray out. And if coolant sprays out all over the place, not only might you have third-degree burns, the rest of your interior will be ruined as well. Another interesting feature about the trunk back here is that this netting can also be removed and put on these hooks down here. So as we discussed, the front trunk is aluminum, but the rear trunk is all steel. In fact, nearly the whole back end of the 987 Cayman is made out of steel. So all that steel and that glass window means that this rear hatch door is pretty darn heavy. But these hydraulic struts here, even though they're kind of skinny, they're very, very strong, and they make lifting and lowering this hatchback very, very easy. So another quick word of advice is when you're putting stuff back here, make sure you watch out for the rear spoiler, especially if you're one of those people that likes to keep it up. If the rear spoiler is up, it can get in the way of getting things in and out of here, and you'll end up bumping it and scuffing it. So I would argue that one of the biggest advantages that a Cayman has over a 911, in fact, one of the few advantages that it does have, is this enormous rear opening. I mean, this is huge. I can get in the back of this from the rear hatch. So I'm sitting back here, and I could probably have another person sit right here next to me. Of course, a 911 does have rear seats, so you will be able to throw a golf bag back there, and you'll be able to put your kids back there. You can throw all kinds of things in the back seat of a 911, which I really love. The downside of that, though, is that it's a little bit less accessible than a big opening on top of the car with this big steel door. In a 911, in order to get whatever you have in the back seats out, you're gonna have to move the seats forward and kind of bend down under the roof line and pull stuff out, which to me seems a lot less convenient than just having a big old opening here where you can just put your suitcase back here, put your gym bag back here, or whatever. I suppose if you have a convertible 911, you can kind of throw things in the back and take them out over the top, but then you're gonna have the convertible roof that you have to open and close. And I guarantee there's no 911 convertible roof that's faster than opening and closing a hatch. So from the beginning of the Cayman's history until the most recent 718 model, the Cayman was always more expensive than the equivalent Boxster. And a big reason why is because of the convenience of this rear hatch. However, that's not the only part. It's also much better because since it has a hardtop roof and all this steel and aluminum structure on top, it creates a much more rigid vehicle with a lot less weight. A 987 Cayman is both lighter and almost twice as rigid as a 987 Boxster. I did get the twice as rigid thing from Porsche forums, and I haven't seen anything official from Porsche themselves, so I may be fact-checked on that. I would have to drive a Boxster of the equivalent trim and body style in order to say for sure whether it's more rigid, but everything I've heard tells me that it does feel much better in terms of torsional rigidity and handling. So another question I've been asked a couple times is, how do these sealants hold up? Because this opening is so big, you do have some very, very long seams that all need to stay sealed so that water doesn't get into the cabin. So far, I've had zero issues with that. I've never had any water leak into here, whether that's from rain or car washes or anything like that. The rubber sealants here, I don't think they've been replaced, and they feel like they're pretty much brand new. Still very springy, they don't have any cracks or damage to them at all. So yeah, that's pretty much all the most intricate details that I can think of and that I've been able to research on the Porsche Cayman's two trunks. And I think I've just barely gotten over that low bar of creating the most interesting video about the Porsche Cayman's trunks that has ever been created. If you agree with that assessment, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. And if you disagree, well, still hit that subscribe button and leave me a comment down below about what I may have missed or what other things you might want to see about the trunks and storage spaces in the Porsche Cayman. In any case, we're getting really close to 10,000 subscribers, which is also a low bar, but one of those that I'm really excited to clear because it's kind of a benchmark for this channel. So do me a favor, subscribe, get us over that 10,000 subscriber mark, and thank you again for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.